Welcome to the Great Loop Radio podcast, brought to you by America's Great Loop Cruisers Association. We're dedicated to sharing Great Loop information and inspiration with those actively cruising, planning for, or dreaming about a Great Loop adventure. I'm Kim Russo. I'm the director of AGLCA. Today we are going to talk about tackling those inland rivers. We're going to take you from Chicago to Paducah. We're doing this right about the time that many of our current fleet of loopers will be headed that way. So this month of September, we are focusing on that on all of our different channels. So we are covering it in today's podcast. An article came out in the September Great Loop Link e-magazine about it, so you can go to our website and find that. And our September virtual Dock Tales, which will take place on September 17th, will also feature a breakout room on this section of the Great Loop route from Chicago to Paducah. So that is our topic today. We will jump in just a moment. First, I want to take a moment to recognize and thank our Admiral sponsors who support AGLCA at the highest level. They are Kathy All, she's a certified financial planner with Edward Jones, Great Loop Yacht Sales, Passage Maker Trawler Fest, Skipper Bob Publications, and Waterway Guide Media. As always, we encourage our listeners and viewers to support these businesses that support the Great Loop. So with the sponsor recognition out of the way, I want to officially welcome Wes and Amy Litzy to the podcast. They are newlyweds, and they are coming to us from Mackinac City. So Wes and Amy, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Kim.
Yeah,
We just got around to that.
congratulations.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. We just got around to that. Oh gosh, what was it, about a week and a half before we took off with the boat?
Yes.
So this whole summer and then the loop, it's like a year and a half long honeymoon.
There you go. That's a great choice for a honeymoon. I like it. Um, so you are just starting your loop there in Mackinac Island, but you are a highly experienced boater. So let's start there. Tell us a little bit about yourselves and your previous boating experience.
Well, I grew up on the Mississippi. I mean, I've been boating since I was big enough to get in a boat. Matter of fact, I think I was put in a boat times I don't remember. But anyhow, yeah, we've got almost 14,000 miles now on this boat. Most of it being some on the lakes here, but most of it being on the river system. And growing up on the rivers, I love the rivers. It I'm a captain too, so I get some time on other boats. Not so much this year. I've been a little busy.
Well, it sounds like you've been cruising your own boat pretty extensively, and because most of your 14,000 or so miles is on the rivers, that's why we asked you to do this. We know a lot of loopers. The current fleet is getting ready to head into the rivers. You yourselves will be part of that fleet. So tell us
Correct.
about your boat, first of all, so we know a little bit more about what you're traveling on.
Toscana's a 44-foot island gypsy trawler, so it's more of the typical looper boat of 10, 15 years ago. Trawlers have kind of fallen out of favor a little bit, but we still love it. We're the third owner. We still stay in contact with the previous owners. Matter of fact, they came and took a cruise with us on the Mississippi last year, and we stopped and saw them in Green Bay on our way up here. So, they're a fun little couple, and it's got a great story. The name, I did not rename the boat. So if you see us, we'll tell you that story about how Toscana got her name.
That's great. And we were docked next to you at Joe Wheeler State Park at the Rendezvous last year. And I got
Yes.
to hear the story, and you actually invited me aboard for drinks, and we ended up staying for dinner. It was a lovely evening. So thank you for hosting
Funny
me.
how that works out.
Isn't it funny how that works out?
Yeah,
Um,
some places they call that the fun wheel. We get stuck on it every once in a while.
right. So we want to fill everybody in on kind of what to expect as they start the inland rivers. We're not going to go all the way down to Mobile today. We'll take you kind of through the Ohio River portion, at least to Paducah. But the first thing that people will probably notice when they get out there on the inland rivers that there's a lot more commercial traffic than you might see in other areas because it is a commercial artery from the Great Lakes down to the Gulf that you're traveling on. So one of the recommendations that you make is to communicate with the tow captains to make passing and meeting arrangements. So explain why that's important. Why is that meaningful to loopers and how should they go about doing that?
Well, the Illinois and not so much Mississippi, but the Illinois especially is a fairly narrow river. and it is their busy time because the biggest commodity shipped on the water is farm products, grains, corn, stuff like that. So well, we're in season. They're the busiest too,
Hmm.
and because of those your turns, it's nice to talk to them. Um, they may want you on the opposite side of them than you would think. They're coming around a corner, they're putting their bow to one side of the channel, but they're going to swing the other side. So they're actually going to want you on that tight corner where it looks like they're empty or they're aiming for, because otherwise, when they slide around the corner, they're going to pop you right out of the channel.
Right.
Um, most of the river system, you can hail them on 16, but they usually answer quicker on 13. This is where it's nice to at least have a radio that receives AIS information. It's nice to hail them by name, if at all possible. If you can't, obviously, northbound tow at such and such mile marker will get you by. Um, and just ask them, hey, Captain, we're going to meet you here in however far you are away, you get a preference which side you want to see us on, and he'll tell you either the one whistle or the two, which
Yeah.
I think everybody's probably covered. But as far as for meeting situations, it's real simple: one whistle, port to port; two whistle, starboard to starboard.
Yeah.
Overtaking, if you're going around them, it's focused on your port. So if you're going to overtake them on a one whistle, you're going to leave them to your port side,
Yeah.
and vice versa for starboard.
Yeah, and that is something that confuses a lot of people. Um, we've talked about it on other episodes of this podcast. Um, I have my little cheat for it. I don't know if you have any cheats you recommend, Wes, or I can share mine.
Well, yeah, they're all good. I'm a pretty simple guy, Some will take the clock and do this or that. Hey, left and port are the short word. One, the long word, starboard and right. Two.
That works. So yeah, it really is kind of that simple that if you are if the one whistle, you're going to point your bow to the left. Yes, making sure I got that right. The two whistle, you're going to point it to the right. So it is pretty easy once you kind of get the hang of it. And I'm glad you kind of went through how you would talk to the tow captain because we always recommend that you ask them where they would like to see you as opposed to you telling them. This is their
Oh,
business. They
correct.
know these rivers. Treat them with that respect that they are the experts. Um, and if you're uncertain about what they're saying or are not sure that they're giving you the correct information, absolutely clarify that. Have you ever run into that, Wes, where they're suggesting something to you and you're thinking that doesn't seem quite right?
Um, not so much that, but you
Hmm.
misunderstand sometimes. Yes, be clear. And if you're not real good with that, one whistle, two whistle, then he says, I'll see you on the one. Okay, copy. One whistle, port to port. Just reiterate it that way so that he'll tell you no, because if you say one whistle and starboard to starboard, he's going to tell you no, you got that messed up, son.
Absolutely. And we would much rather perhaps be a little bit embarrassed when they tell us we've got it wrong than have an incident, where there's somebody's in a dangerous situation. And we have talked
Correct.
to tow captains on the podcast, and they have also said they want to communicate with you. They want to make sure everything's clear. They would much prefer that. So thank you for sharing those details. The other thing that's going to be new for people as they hit the rivers, depending on where you've started the loop, you may never have done a lock at all. So if you started from the Great Lakes, these could be your very first locks. Even if you started from somewhere on the East Coast and have done, the whole Erie Canal or the whole Trent Severn, these locks are very, very different. And we've talked about, locking before on the podcast as well. But as it pertains specifically to these inland rivers locks that are immense in some cases and are run by the Corps of Engineers, kind of give us the brief highlights of, what to expect and any tips you have on how we should approach these locks.
Sure. I mean, the Army Corps of Engineers locks are by far, I think, the easiest ones to work with. Yes, they're big. Don't and if you haven't been through a big one, I can see where their size is somewhat intimidating. But other than the first lock you get to, either the Chicago Harbor or O'Brien, those you will either float or just get some lines. The rest of them you will start getting floating pins, and it makes the world so much easier. Um, the Upper Mississippi, for example, they don't have, it's all the two line stuff. And, uh, last year when we got back down to Melvin Price, boy, we were both happy to get pins again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they, and it's real simple. Some people worry about getting held up, and you do sometimes. The biggest tip, or how I explain this to people is I talk to the lock with the attitude that, hey, I'm working for you today. In other words, hey, I'm a half hour out. I can get there a little slower, faster. Just let you know that so we can get on your schedule. He might tell you, oh, you got a 2 hour wait, and I've had that. I've also had it where you're sitting there, and then they'll push you through, or even a tow captain will say, "Hey, why don't you get those guys out of the way?" Um, if you do get bad news, try to just, hey, no problem. We're here when you're ready for us. With that attitude, don't try not to sound disappointed, because if be when you hang the mic up, be disappointed if you want, but when you're talking to them, be cordial about it, and 9 times out of 10, you'll breeze right through.
Yeah.
Um, if
Let's
you're
unpack that just a little bit, though. So,
okay,
for those who maybe have not studied the lock system yet, tell us about the priorities, because if you've just come through the Erie Canal or the Trent Severn, you may not understand what do you mean 2 hours?
yeah,
So, go ahead and tell us about the pecking order.
yeah, we're last.
Exactly.
Commercial is priority. There's 4 stages. We're last. You've got government and government boats and Army Corps, uh, things like that, Coast Guard, commercial, and then we're last on the list.
Yeah. So the
Um,
wait sometimes can be long, especially if some of these tows are pushing tens of barges strung together, and sometimes that barge string is bigger than can even fit in one lock through. So sometimes they break those apart and put them back together, and that's what leads to the longest delays. Um,
Correct.
but so, as you were explaining, if the lock operator tells you it's going to be a while, I think your strategy is spot on, because if you try to fuss at them or argue with them, or even if you're just disappointed and that comes across as being argumentative, your fate is in that person's hands
Correct.
right then.
Correct.
So, kindness is really going to get you a long way in those cases, and cooperation and that cooperative spirit that Wes was talking about, approaching it like he works for them today. So that's been successful for you, I assume?
Correct. I mean, it very few times we've had very much of a wait. Heck, we came up, and sometimes you will have that tow captain that you talk to, and you guys were nice and friendly with. He'll even jump on the radio and say, "Why don't you just put them through? We're doing this or we're doing that." While we're trying to get lined up and set up for it, because yeah, they also know too. It's going to take a while to get them through they have a second cut, and it all takes time, and we're just in their way. So if
Right.
we're nice, they're as happy to get us out of their way as we are to be out of their way.
Absolutely. So one of the other things I just want to touch on, and like I said, we've had episodes on locking specifically, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but
Hmm.
it is a place we get a lot of questions. One of the things that's very different about the way you lock through is in the smaller locks, they're mostly recreational locks in the Trent Severn, the historic ones. You're
Yes.
typically getting a line at the bow and the stern, so it's taking two people really to properly lock that boat through. Um, Whereas in these bigger locks, the pins or bollards, as they're called, are far enough apart that you're only grabbing one. So you're really kind of holding the boat at midships, which makes it a little bit easier possibly for one person to handle it. Amy, I know you work full time aboard, so sometimes you're occupied with that. Um, so for the two of you as a couple, how different is that when it's really only one bollard instead of two lines, perhaps?
Well, it makes it easier from the standpoint of if she's on a call, which
Hmm.
for the most part, goes into the working while looping subject that's
Yeah.
been talked about too. But if for the most part, I try to schedule us our arrival times so that she's available.
Hmm.
But there, hey, we're sitting there waiting, and well, she's got a call. Okay, well, then I come downstairs and I work with it for myself. So I can get us over, grab a line, tighten it up. It you definitely want to be as midship as possible.
Hmm.
Um, and oh,
And as tight as possible
correct.
so you don't bounce and swing because
Hmm.
if you're in the middle, so you'll have some play. You want to get it as tight as you can.
Going down isn't as bad, but when you're going up, they can be turbulent. And to me, I like to be nice and tight to the wall. You've got your fenders, obviously. Yeah,
Hmm.
your fenders are they get a little slimy from the stuff on the wall, but that'll wash off.
Right. It's what they're there
If
for.
if you're too far away from the wall and your boat starts moving back and forth, well, the further it can move, the more it can accelerate, the more it can squish a fender and actually hit the concrete wall.
Hmm.
If they're nice and tight where it can't wiggle back and forth much, I breathe easier.
Yeah. And the other thing, if you could just describe, I know it's hard, audio only, and if you're watching this on YouTube, obviously you see us, but we try to do
Mhm.
this all audio only because most people are consuming it
Right.
as a podcast. But describe the pins you mentioned, or sometimes called ballards. But how are you securing your boat to that to lock through?
It is just like what would be a traditional bollard, only the difference is it's mounted on a big can, like a 55-gallon drum, only on steroids.
Hmm.
And it floats up and down in a recess in the wall. And there's many different styles. Um, if they've got the ears midway down, those are great ones, and they're great for the looper's loop
Hmm.
that's has been talked about.
Hmm.
Um, if you'll get some of them that just have like a teardrop top on them, or even just a round one. With those, I get a little nervous about that looper's loop because it can flop off real easy, and I like to make two turns around it and then back to the boat. So that and part of that is our deck level is usually a foot on average, sometimes foot and a half
Higher than the bollard.
above the top of that pin. If your deck hardware is pretty much level, uh, then it doesn't matter. You could use that looper's loop on anything.
Hmm.
It all depends on your boat, and if you tend to like the tall docks for getting on and off your boat, um, more so than the ones where you can get off on your swim platform. But because of your boat, you're probably going to be above that pin, and you're going to have to be a little extra careful that your line can't pull up off of it.
Yeah, and that is the struggle we have. Our boat is high on the at the midships.
Hmm.
Um, so yes, the ones with the ears are my favorites because the line will stay on that. The ones that are kind of teardropped or just round, we have struggled with that. And the other thing you hear all the time is, mechanically, if you've done the locks on the Trent Severn or the Erie, and you've wrapped your line around one of those cables or pipes,
Hmm.
it's the same thing. You're wrapping your line, it's cleated to your boat, you're wrapping it around the bollard, you're bringing it back. It's recommended you not tie it off in the event that it does get stuck. And I will show the one time we had to cut a line, I had wrapped it twice
Hmm.
because we were very high. It was, coming off. And that helped that situation. And then somehow it got caught. So it wasn't while the lock was still transitioning. It was over. The doors were open. Everyone was wondering why is the perch not exiting? It was because the line was stuck and we had to cut it. But, point being, if the bollard got caught up and wasn't floating for some reason, that's where you can run into trouble. So for anybody who's, wondering about the process, that's just why people tell you Don't lock it down on a cleat. Use the cleat for leverage. But other than that, it's a pretty easy process, and we have more resources for locking through. So if that makes anybody particularly nervous, there's plenty of places to go. Did you have another comment on locking, Wes?
Yeah. I was going to say, no matter whether yeah, how you go about that, whether you use leverage, some do cleat it down. No matter what, I have a knife handy. But also, if a bollard would stick, now up in the air as you're going down, it's not as big of a concern. But if it while you're going up and it doesn't float and it stays behind, whatever you do when you're trying to free your line, last ditch effort before you cut it, do not stick your head over the rail outside of the gunnel uh, near that recess, because if it would pop loose, it comes up with immense force and it could take your head off. I
That's a
mean,
good tip. And that's not one
I
I've heard before, but it makes total sense. So thank you for
yes,
sharing that. We don't want that to happen to anybody.
yes. So just think when you're going through them.
Yeah.
That
And
it
it's pretty unusual for them to get stuck. I mean, they're in
correct,
operation. These locks operate all year round, 24 hours a day.
correct,
It's not a common circumstance, but you do need to be ready in case it does. So thank you for sharing that tip.
correct. Yeah, it's not you shouldn't see it at one ever stick, but
Yeah,
heaven forbid. And also too, when you enter a lock, if they have one that they're having trouble with, they'll tell you stay away from
exactly.
number such and such pin on this side.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Yeah. So let's shift to one of the other things that can be a concern for people as they're starting their rivers, and that is it's more rural. There are fewer marinas, fewer opportunities to tie up at night. So let's talk about that a little bit. What kind of expectations can you set for people? Is it possible to do this segment from Chicago to Paducah without anchoring, or should you be prepared to anchor in some places?
you're definitely gonna have to anchor some. Um, eh, Maybe you won't have to anchor, maybe you raft to somebody, but there's going to be at least one even if you're a fast boat, you're going to have at least one anchor stop.
Hmm.
You can get through the Illinois River between the free wall at Joliet, and you've got Beardstown, the Logston Tug Service. So if you really don't want to anchor, you can pretty much get through the Illinois River, but once you go past, you go down on the Mississippi, you've got Hoppies, you've got Kaskaskia, but from there you don't have anywhere to tie up until Paducah. So you're gonna, we've got some very popular places, but somebody's gonna anchor. If you raft up with somebody else that's anchoring, that's all fine, but be ready to use an anchor.
Yeah. And just to set the stage for that a little bit, um, some of these are a little bit non-traditional. So you mentioned Kaskaskia,
Hmm.
and that is a lock. So there is a wall there you can tie to. So I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that there's a marina there because there's
No,
not.
no.
And in some years, they actually, when they've been doing maintenance, they've moved that wall. So it's a very viable anchorage, even if there's no wall there. But that
Correct.
is a place, if you're not going to anchor, you can tie up. The other thing you mentioned in that part was Hoppies. And I do want to point out that Hoppies, while I would say you can rely on it this season for a fuel stop, do not necessarily rely on it as a place to tie up because they are down to one barge. It's never been a fancy place, but it was a set of barges tied together on the riverbank there, and they have had flooding and other damage over the years, and they are down to just one. So they called me and told me a month or so ago that there would be no overnight dockage. I know a looper or two who have already come through and were able to dock overnight, but probably because it's not the real busy season yet. So that is another consideration for sure. And Logsden is a bit of a different animal as well. We were rafted 3 deep at Logsden when we came through, and it legit, as Wes said, it's a tow service.
Hmm.
And they have some barges tied there, or sometimes some tows, and you can tie to them, and they charge you for that, and that is,
That's all you
perfectly
get.
fine. It is just a place to tie up, so don't expect marina service, don't expect power and water, and
You can
About
go to shore and get dinner if you don't
You
want to cook
absolutely
aboard.
can.
That's about all you
Be
get.
careful. It's a really big ladder to climb up to shore. But and this, I don't like to share this, but I did receive information a couple years ago that they were not going to have recreational boaters there anymore because somebody had been ugly about the expectations and, was asked to move because they needed to get one of the barges out or something,
Mhm.
and the owners there were given attitude by some recreational boaters. And I hate to hear that because that
Oof.
is absolutely not what recreational boaters are about most of the time. But just remember, this isn't a marina. This is not their business. They're kind of just being nice by letting you tie up there, and they charge like $1 a foot, which these days is nothing.
Right.
They don't have to do that. So if you'd like a place to tie up rather than anchoring in that area, just make sure you're kind and courteous and appreciative to those people, which I know for most of our loopers that goes absolutely without saying. They're just naturally like that. But a little reminder never hurts.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean, we've never stayed there because we anchor. We
yeah,
like to anchor, but and I suspect it was probably somebody that didn't want to anchor. But remember, those of you that don't enjoy anchoring as much, this is that's where, oh gosh, thank you, because
yes.
that's a stretch that you absolutely would have to anchor if they weren't nice enough to let you in.
Absolutely. And it's no secret that we don't anchor a lot. And this stretch that we're talking about, we did anchor twice. And one was at Kaskaskia, not tied to the wall, but anchored.
Mhm.
And once was, I know this is on your list, Wes, that is going to
Little
be in the Great
diversion.
Loop link.
Little
It
diversion.
was not, I don't think it was Little Diversion, but very near there. Anyway, another
Um,
anchorage right near
and Angelo Towhead, maybe.
yes, it was Angelo Towhead.
Okay.
Right near the intersection of where the Ohio meets the Mississippi. We also anchored there, and we're in a faster boat, so we covered a lot of ground, but still anchored a couple of times on this stretch. And I love to anchor, so I was happy. Beautiful evenings both times, but just be
Mhm.
prepared for that because it is a little bit different. Another reminder that you had for us, Wes, is, minding your channel markers, which certainly comes into play everywhere on the loop, but certainly important on the inland rivers. So just tell us a little bit about your thought process when you're putting out that reminder for loopers to mind your channel markers in this area.
All right, and it's there's no cut and dried answer here. Uh, First thing, make sure you've got your up-to-date charts.
Hmm.
Second, look at what you see out in front of you. Because what happens, first of all, if you see a brand new shiny channel marker that doesn't line up with your chart, well, that might be something that was put in place on purpose. But
Hmm.
if it's an old beat up uh, buoy that looks like it's been out there for years, and it's not where it belongs, it's probably off station. But you have to take what you see with your eyes, what you see with on your chart, and make a judgment call. Because sometimes, with every time the river floods, buoys get pulled off station. Generally, if there is a major shift to the channel. There'll be new buoys put out. Sometimes they're only virtual. Here, another plug for AIS, even if it's just the receive. Sometimes you'll have new buoys that are just they'll only show up on your chart plotter. You can't see them. Uh, so if you don't receive AIS, you're not seeing that information. Does that mean you got to go run out and get it? No, but I'll bet you there's another boat that you'll be traveling in close proximity with. Talk to them. Let them know, hey, I don't have AIS. If you see this, give me a holler on the radio.
Yep. Super helpful. And then the other thing you should be aware of, and you have some tips, again, a little bit hard without the visuals, but talk to us about what we need to know about wing dams and dikes, because that may be something that loopers have not encountered till they get to this area.
Yes, and you don't have them on the Illinois, but you have them as soon as you start uh, on the Mississippi. And one of the things that I talk about, and again, without the visual here, you're not gonna. It's hard to get, but you can look at your chart on Navonics and an Aquamap and maybe another source, right where the Mississippi and the Illinois come together. Now, and I don't mean to pick on Navonics here, even though I'm talking about something that I don't like about what they do. They will show not only the wing dams with a dotted line, they also show what they call revetments, which are structures that they put in the channel that you normally can pass over. They show them both with the same dotted line. Some of the other charts visually break that up into two different things. And I like that because as you'll go down the Mississippi, you will pass over tons of those revetments. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The wing dams, you don't want to pass over those. And
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
and being able to tell that difference is important. And again, it's nothing. Novonics, their charts are great in a lot of ways, but that is just one visual representation that I don't care for about that.
Mhm.
And I've seen a couple boaters that went to anchor then on the Ohio right over Wing Dam and caused damage to their boat.
Yeah, that would do
So
it for
that's why I
sure.
bring it up.
Yeah, perfect. We appreciate that heads up. Let's take a quick break and play a message from some sponsors. When we come back, I just have a few more questions about fuel stops because you will also encounter the longest distance between fuel stops during this leg. I want to talk a little bit about floating debris and also the change we can expect when we turn onto the Ohio. So we will be back in a moment. Please join us in welcoming our new Admiral sponsor, Kathy All. Kathy is an Edward Jones financial advisor and certified financial planning professional. She works for a firm that shares her passion for helping to make lives better. Edward Jones is a decidedly different type of investment firm, and they believe building a relationship with each client is one of the most important aspects of successful investing. Working closely with your CPA, attorney, and other professionals, Kathy All takes the time to understand what's important to you so she can use their established processes to build a financial strategy tailored to you and your family. Contact her at kathy.all@edwardjones.com. That's CATHY.AULL@edwardjones.com. Life is better by the bay. Here in Panama City, Florida, we have deep blue water surrounded by arts and culture. We love our historic neighborhoods, southern coastal cuisine, and the songs and stories of our locals, and we're sure you will too. If you're traveling along America's Great Loop, drop your anchor at St. Andrews Bay in Panama City and enjoy easy access to waterfront restaurants and shopping, a favorite among loopers. Land or water, you're going to love it here. Visit destinationpanamacity.com and learn more. We're back on the Great Loop Radio podcast. Today we're with Wes and Amy Litzy. They are walking us through some tips and some ideas of things that we should know or consider before starting the inland rivers. And today we're talking primarily about the Illinois waterway, which will take you to the Mississippi, which will take you to the Ohio. So let's talk a little bit about fuel. This is the largest distance between fuel stops on the Great Loop is currently from Hoppies on the upper Mississippi to Paducah. It's about 200 miles. Wes, have you ever come through there and had one or the other of those not pumping fuel?
Oh yes, we had Hoppies was out for at least 2 years, I think it was, wasn't? Or at least two loop seasons, I believe, where their fuel was down. So don't count on them. Call ahead, because I will say this: everybody that's price shopping, Hoppies is usually cheaper. They're definitely cheaper than Alton. They're usually a few cents cheaper than like Port St. Charles and things like that. So it's a great stop price wise for fuel, but give them a call ahead just to make sure that they're going to be there for it. The Some used to get fuel at Cape Girardeau, but last I have heard the fuel truck company sold, and the
Yep.
new guy isn't doing it.
That was my
And
understanding. There used to be fuel if you continued up the Kaskaskia further than just the lock and the anchorage there. That last I checked also was no longer pumping fuel. So yeah. So you're coming down the Illinois River. At the confluence of the Mississippi is where those places that Wes just mentioned are, Alton, Port Charles. So if you're planning on fueling up at Hoppy's a little further down and are going to need the fuel, do exactly what he's suggesting, please, and call ahead to make sure. And then you'll have about 200 miles between Hoppy's. We'll turn onto the Ohio River and head for Paducah, where there's also a fuel stop. Also frequently seems to have outages on their ability to pump fuel. And if you can't get fuel at Paducah, the next place is basically the land between the lakes area when you're on the Tennessee River. So another 50
yeah.
miles or so. So manage your fuel call ahead, particularly for some of our gasoline powered loopers, although they're in the minority. This is the area that gives them headaches. So if you're in that category, make sure that you plan ahead. But Wes, I also just kind of mentioned the turn from the Mississippi River onto the Ohio, which is a notable turn because, tell us why.
You're gonna feel like you dropped your anchor.
Yes.
You know, and and it all depends on river conditions. Um, you know, it's not as drastic when they're both in low water, but goodness gracious, if the Mississippi is flowing pretty good, you know, you could be turning for 8.5 miles an hour and getting 15, and all of a sudden you turn up the Ohio and you're getting 6. It's like, what the heck happened?
Yep.
Am
And
I
of
even still
course,
moving?
one of the reasons that most people do the loop counterclockwise is to take advantage of those river currents coming down. But Ohio is the one exception. The Ohio River runs in the other direction. So when you leave the Mississippi and you're getting that extra push from the current, you are suddenly heading straight into that current and slowing down substantially. So plan for that, to be ready for that. We've had some slower boats who made that turn and felt like they were going in reverse from there for the distance that, and it's a short distance on the Ohio
Yeah,
River,
yeah,
but
it's 45 miles. I mean,
mm-hmm,
both the last two springs we've came up the Mississippi
mm-hmm.
from Paducah to uh, uh, the Alton area. So we've fought the Mississippi. Uh, the Ohio's a piece of cake compared to that.
Yeah. So one last concern that we want to prepare people for before we wrap this up is the possibility of debris. So tell us why that was on your list of things to look out for.
Uh, Debris. And you can judge this by what you're going to see out there by the weather.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you get a decent amount of rain and that the river, be that the Illinois or mostly the Mississippi, but the Illinois can do it as well, where you get enough rain where you have the river come up even as little as 6 inches. What happens is every time the river goes down, it deposits debris. Well, then as soon as it starts coming back up, it picks some of that deposited up, and here we go again. Plus whatever new might be washed in from a creek or this or that. Um, you just have to keep your eyes out for it. But it's not, and little pieces of debris isn't that big a deal. You will see entire trees floating down. You'll see them stuck on the wing dams sometimes. Um, it so it is something to be thoughtful of. I mean, there's you get debris fields of small stuff, little sticks, you know, inch or two in diameter. If you hit that, not going to hurt anything usually. But if you run over a tree, it's going to hurt.
Yeah. Well, and that can happen anywhere on the Great Loop, but it's just more prone to
Correct.
happen here because there can be substantial flooding some of the time. And
And
you'll learn that when you get to Paducah and see the wall they've built around their city with the lines of where the floods have come up, and you will be astounded by how much water they have had during flood season. So you can just imagine, the water raises tens of feet, sometimes 50 feet,
yeah,
and then
about
anything
50
it
feet.
has accessed on the shore it is pulling back in as it comes back down. So that's what we're talking about. It's a great thing for people to know to look out for. Go ahead, Wes.
And when you get to Paducah, keep in mind that long walkway you walk up from the dock,
Mm-hmm.
and you look at those big spud poles that dock is on.
Yep.
Just this spring, the water was right up to the flood walls. Matter of fact, I think they did close the gates for a few days on the Ohio this spring.
Yeah, it's
Eh,
it's kind of fascinating if you look at Paducah. It is essentially, if you have not been there, it is a walled city. They have built a wall to
Correct.
protect from flooding. Pretty amazing.
And with the debris too, um, you know, telling you to be cautious, but the reality is we we took advantage of 8 inches of rain last fall in the St. Louis area. We left Alton on a Wednesday morning. Thursday evening, we were anchored below Olmsted on the Ohio.
Wow.
Is it
Mm-hmm.
but there was a lot of debris.
Yeah.
But you can navigate around it. It's just in other words, don't hear, oh gosh, if there's debris, I can't go. It's not that. You can. It's better if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Especially if this is the loop is um, your first boating experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you make good choices for yourself, but it's not the end of the world. You can navigate around it.
Yeah. So for you in Tuscana, how many days do you usually plan if you were going to go from Chicago to Paducah? Give us and I know it obviously you just said one time it was super fast because the water was moving so fast, but in general for a looper boat, how many days should they plan of actual travel dates?
Well, let's see. Let's go through them here. Your first day, you're going to end up at the Joliet Wall. It's
Mm-hmm.
just how it's going to work out. You're going to next. You're either going to go to Springbrook or Heritage Harbor. Springbrook is great, but we recommend Heritage if you can get there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two. Your third day, you're either going to anchor or you're going to stop at Hennepin. Um, your fourth, you're probably looking at Peoria, either the Ivy Club or the free wall. I hate to recommend the free wall in Peoria, uh, but um, but there's anchorage opportunities there too.
Mm-hmm.
Your fifth day would be Beardstown or anchoring. Um, Usually 6 day. By the sixth day, you're in Grafton. If you're running a little slow, there's Mel's River Dock. It's a restaurant, got a nice face dock about 20 miles before you get to Grafton. Great stop, great food. So 6 to 6.5 days to get down the Illinois. Once you get on the Mississippi, now Hoppy's not being available for dockage or one boat per night, essentially not available. You got two choices for the first night. You can either anchor just above Hoppy's, or you go down to the Kaskaskia Lock Wall, and it's 70 miles. Now I know, a typical looper day is 50, but on the Mississippi, that extra 20 miles is nothing.
Right.
Um, there, you should have no problem getting to Kaskaskia if in one day, if that's what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Then you only have then you have another 70 miles to Little Diversion Canal just south of Cape Girardeau. And if you have a pet that needs to go potty, there is a boat ramp about a mile up that canal. Don't take them down those muddy banks. You will not like that anchorage if you do. Um, and then from there, um, depending on the speed, you might anchor at Angelo Towhead, right where the confluence is. You might make it up to Olmsted. Uh, you're not, unless you're a really fast boat, you're not going to make it to Paducah there. So you're going to have an anchor, uh, an anchor out probably just below or just above Olmsted Lock, and they're real good about that. But do call and talk to the lock before you anchor, because which side of the channel you can anchor on depends on river levels. Olmsted is a wicket dam. So when the water is high, they put the wickets down and traffic doesn't lock through. It passes over the dam. So the normal anchorage on the left descending bank, nope, you can't use that. They'll have you anchor over on the lock side because nobody's coming through the lock. You'll have that on the Illinois at Lagrange as well.
Okay. So I think we were at about 12 days. I might have lost count there.
12,
Um,
30, yeah,
but
yeah,
remember that that's, travel days for anyone out there. Now,
correct.
it is more common to continuously travel daily in this area because there's just not as much to see and do. But there are places if you want to take a break for a couple days, you can certainly do that. But, keep in mind that's the number of travel days on average. Some people might do that in 13 days and some people might do it in 26 because they only want to travel every other day. So keep that in mind. Um, and I think we've covered most of the kind of things that people should at least be cognizant of. If you want more about that itinerary that Wes just ran through, that is a pretty standard itinerary for that area. Very closely matches what the Perch did when we came through. You can find an itinerary as an example on the greatloop.org website in the Great Loop Route area under the
Mhm.
segments. So look for that. And if you want more details about all of these things we've just covered, Wes and Amy wrote an article for us for the September issue of the Great Loop Link newsletter. So that is available to members now. And on September 17th, at our next virtual Dock Tales for our members, if you're not familiar with that event, we break into 5 different breakout rooms. You have your choice of topics, and Amy and Wes will be hosting a breakout room talking about this area. So that's the perfect opportunity if you have questions or need some recommendations. It's kind of an open discussion format, and they will be there hosting that and facilitating that to answer whatever questions you have. So Wes and Amy, it's been a great introduction to this area at just the right time as people are getting ready to do it. I want to hear from Amy, though. Most people either love or hate the rivers. There's not a whole lot of in between. We know Wes loves them. How do you feel about the rivers? You've cruised them a lot at this point.
I have. I actually prefer the rivers because it's not as weather dependent.
Hmm.
This one thing being up here on the Great Lakes is so weather dependent and it's kind of wreaking havoc things on some of the scheduled things. But I like the rivers. I like to anchor as well. So I like
Hmm.
the quiet and prefer when you have the river, and it gives you that natural flow to kind of keep you straight so you don't swing all over.
Yes.
Um, I personally love it. It's great. I like the locks on the
Hmm.
river system. They're so much easier. Personally, I know, but I know it's what I'm used to. So to me, they're so much easier. And they're 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 so nice. Even when you're going through, they're gonna most of the time, depends on how busy they are, will come out and talk to you and ask you, oh,
Yeah.
where are you going? What you doing? And ask them, hey, what's going, what's further down? They'll tell you if there's anything going on. They'll tell you if you're worried about debris, ask them. Oh yeah, there's no, it's very light. You're not going to hardly see any. Ask them about water levels if you're concerned about it.
Hmm.
Anything that you're concerned about, more than likely they know and can give you some guidance.
That's great
And why
advice.
not? Being friendly, they also talk amongst each other
Hmm.
on the lock system. Nicer you are, the more grace you're going to get down the road too.
That
So
is absolutely the best advice. Thank you for sharing that, Amy.
You
Thank
know,
you. Yeah, go ahead,
I
Wes.
was just going to say, I think in the last few years, the river system has kind of gotten a bad rap,
Hmm.
and part of it is with the lock closures.
Right.
Everybody's been bunched in these large groups, and it takes some of the fun out of it. And take your time. Most of these stops, there's things that you can stop and do. But yes, we love the nature. I mean, you'll get if you love birds, and her dad comes with us every once in a while. He gets more close-up pictures of eagles than you'd ever
Yeah.
imagine.
Awesome.
They're, uh, it's something you won't see again, and it, just take a deep breath and take it all in, because it's a special trip
Yeah, absolutely
going through the
true.
river.
Each segment is different, and the rivers certainly is different, and every person is different. I enjoyed the rivers, even though we don't anchor a lot. So, yeah, I appreciate you both coming on because hopefully you have positioned this as something that people should really be looking forward to and embracing the natural beauty and the serenity of the rivers, rather than something that they're, cautious or worried about, because it really can be a fun experience going down the rivers. Wes and Amy,
absolutely.
yeah.
And look for us if you've got other things. We're traveling with you guys.
Yes.
So if look for us. Look on Nebo. We'll you find us. You want to pick my brain at Docktails. I don't know how much there is to pick, but you have at it. You can have all that's there.
No, that's great. We appreciate it. Appreciate you both. Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
with us. And thanks to everyone who's watched or listened this week. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Great Loop Radio podcast. Until then, safe cruising.